Crisis of Infinite Time Dimensions, Part 1, by Rob Harper. In the city, the idea of superpowered beings is the norm. The powers try and keep the city safe from those villains who want to ruin it. After a long, hard day adventuring, powers are just like regular people. Some go home to their families, some retreat to their secret underground lairs, and some go to the best power bar in the city, Knockers. Knockers not only has great chicken wings and half-priced apps after 10, but it is also a great place to do power watching. It isn't uncommon to see Captain Courage hanging out with the Tortoise Kid, or members of the Beta relaxing while in town. Knockers also happens to sit on the axis of a temporal rift, although no one really noticed. That is until a few weeks ago, when Jeremy Bullocks from Wisconsin went to the men's washroom. He stepped into the fourth stall for what he hoped was a quick expulsion of waste, and found himself in a prehistoric jungle, about to be eaten by a dinosaur. He didn't have time to think about what an odd occurrence this was, before he was swept away by Lightning Lass, who happened to hear Jeremy's screams coming from the fourth stall, give or take a few eons. Lightning Lass reached through the rift and dragged Jeremy back to the present, and thus a new tourist attraction was born. Months after Jeremy's encounter with the dinosaurs, elsewhere in the city, Lupine has caught a scent. He had been tracking a dark entity all the way from Ireland. The Beta had been tipped off by Crimson about some great conspiracy involving the Masters of Violence and others. The London branch of the Beta sent their best man to investigate. Lupine wasn't happy. He'd been brought out of semi-retirement and supposed death for this mission. The stub of his left hand still throbbed at night, where it was severed. He had hoped to continue his quiet teaching job, and not to have to go out hunting villains again. But sometimes the needs of the many get the wants of one man overruled. He really wasn't looking forward to the backlash when all of his enemies find out he was alive. Not to mention his children. He shudders at that thought.
He's close. Of all the places, why'd it have to be here? The city. Ugh.
Lupine winds his way through the dark alleys of the Sin Town, the worst area of the city. Also the place where Lupine is most likely to meet up with some of his old nemeses. Research had ID'd his prey as Nyarlathotep, one of the Great Old One's messengers. He hated the Elder Gods. They were a pain in his ass.
Of course he'd be in the Church of Dagon. Where else? They didn't need my tracking skills to figure that out.
Supposedly Nyarlathotep had mitts in lots of places. Some even say it had something to do with that warp mess last year.
Warp. Add another name on a list of enemies out there to get me, now that I've been resurrected.
Lupine puts all that out of his mind as he sneaks into the dark structure. It's eerily quiet as always. Most of the true worshippers wouldn't come out until at least midnight. He was early. The Church of Dagon wasn't like any other church you could imagine. Inside, the seating benches of the worshippers sit in rowed semicircles around the 10-foot wide basin filled with dank, pungent water. To Lupine's increased sense of smell, the water was overwhelming. He subconsciously extends his claws from their internal sheaths. This overpowering smell is probably the reason he doesn't hear Nyarlathotep come up behind him.
It's nice to see you again, Connor. I knew you were dead.
Lupine spins and slashes his remaining claws towards Nyarlathotep, and then rolls out of the way towards the water basin.
I'm amazed you remember me, Nye. I thought us mortals were beneath your notice.
Lupine leaps at the black mass with red eyes, that is the being known as Nyarlathotep. His claws slash the mass. There is no blood, but Nyarlathotep rears back as if wounded. The messenger of the gods recovers quickly, however, and backhands Lupine back from whence he came. Lupine lands back at the basin and nearly falls into the water. He pulls himself back in time to see Nyarlathotep march towards him.
It's those wonderful claws that make me remember Nat. No one injures me and lives. Now to take your other hand.
On one of Lupine's many adventures with the Justice Club, he'd been enchanted while fighting frost ogres in Nephilim. It hadn't done much for Lupine in the end, but the side effect was that he was one of the few humans on the planet able to harm the outer beings. Now you can see why it had been him who had been sent on this mission.
I do like to leave a mark.
Lupine starts to attack again, but is snatched out of the air by an invisible force. Nyarlathotep holds his hand out, and by extension Lupine is held suspended in air.
Do you think I would let you attack me again? I'm a god. You are nothing compared to me.
Nyarlathotep flings Lupine into the dark water that the Dagon worshippers revere. Lupine is engulfed in the putrid liquid, and all goes black. Now for a little history lesson. Before their tragic demise during the Alien War, the Justice Club were a bastion of truth, justice, and all that was good. Some say after they died, the world entered a new, darker age of powers. No longer were the lines so cut and dry between good and evil. Even Lupine had changed after his old compatriots were no more. He went on to help form the Beta and Professor Wildebeest's school, but it just wasn't the same. The Justice Club started as a group of like-minded powers who came together to fight Simian Superior. This is a retelling of that wonderful day. Normally Simeon's superior could have been dealt with by any of the individual members of the club, but on this fateful day he had found a way to increase his size 100-fold. Unfortunately, his superior intellect decreased, and the nearly mindless beast had ruined a large section of the city before the Justice Club had formed, and drawn him to an abandoned Air Force base outside of the town.
All right, gang. Let's deal with this gigantic gorilla. Lady Peace, Power Punch, you go left. Doc Odd and the Tag Team Twins, you go right. The Marsupial and I will go up the middle. On my mark.
What about us, Captain Milky Way? Fitmiss and I want to help too.
I'm sorry, Lupine. You and Fitmiss are junior members of our new Justice Club. You just try and make sure the civilians are all out of the area.
Ah, shucks, Captain. This place is abandoned. There ain't no civilians.
Just do as you're told, boy. We'll handle this Super Simian superior. All right, people, now!
This is where, in the history books, they tell of how the Justice Club soundly thrashed the giant simian menace. And with the help of Doc Odd's magics, they returned the super-intelligent simian superior to his correct size and intellect. He was thrown in the maximum security White Door prison, which he later escaped from. But this is all ancient history. What the history books don't say is what happened instead. Lupine was thrown into the dark water, and he thought he was dead. It wouldn't take much for an Elithertup to keep him under until he drowned. After all he had gone through, this is how it was to die. He shuts his eyes and waits for the end. The next thing he feels is falling. Lupine opens his eyes to see he is several hundred feet above the ground and falling fast. In the split second he has to act, he takes in what he can see. Lots of concrete below, not good for landing. A group of powers and a giant ape. Not what he expected from heaven, but it would do. Lupine twists and contorts his body to aim at the ape. He grabs a tuft of head fur as he flashes by. His momentum swings him in a quick arc right at the gigantic gorilla's eye. Lupine does what he does best and pops his claws and aims. He dives into the ape's eye, right into its brain. The giant beast falls and he slashes his way out to receive the thanks of the powers he helped.
So, is this heaven, or I just kill a giant ape for real?
You just murdered him!
Oh god, he wasn't your pet or something, was he? The way you guys were... Wait.
Just as Lupine is having a revelation, the younger version of himself walks out from behind what he realizes is Captain Milky Way. He is overwhelmed.
Captain? Lady Peace? Pee-Pee? The twins? Supio?
From behind his younger self peeks the face of Fitmiss, Lupine's first love.
Missy? Am I dead?
Fitmiss jumps back behind the young Lupine at the mention of her real name.
Look here, mister. I don't know who you are, but we don't go around killing people, even if they are 100-foot tall ape.
Your hand. It's me, I can feel it.
Now listen, boy.
That's it. That bastard Nalethtertup.
Language! There are ladies present.
He stuck me from time. He threw me back here.
Lupine looks back at the gargantuan corpse behind him.
Was that Simian superior? Oops, that can't be good for the time stream.
Lupine goes on to explain how he ended up 40 years in his past. The Justice Club look incredulous, but Lupine knows everything about them, and with some insider knowledge, along with some dark secrets whispered in some ears, they eventually believe him.
So now, to find a way to get you back before you cause any more trouble. Are all powers from the future like you? What happened?
Well, after you guys... never mind. Doc got any spells that might send me back?
No, I do not meddle with time. I have already sensed a disturbance in the coronal fabric. You must be sent back.
Damn, we're gonna have to do this the hard way. Can you guys get me to Knockers on the corner of 2nd and D Street? There's a time portal there. That just might get me back.
Knockers? I don't know that place. There is a dive bar there, though.
Ah yes, a hive of villainy that I believe the Marsupial has busted a few times. But it's called McDougal's.
Oh right, it won't be Knockers for a few decades. You're gonna love it, kid. It's got waitresses with tight shirts and shorts and the best wings.
Enough! The sooner we get rid of you, the better. I won't have you corrupting our junior members any longer than I have to.
Back at Knockers, the time tour industry is booming. Now you might be thinking that allowing a time portal to be used for amusement might be dangerous, not only to the participants, but also to all of reality. This would be true, but Knockers is nothing but cognizant of the potential legal ramifications of ruining reality. They therefore develop an action plan, whereas a group of guides would be assigned to the time tourists to keep them out of trouble whilst adventuring through the chronosphere. These guides were hired away from the time agents by Knockers' conglomerate overlord, Smile Co., with promises of hefty paychecks and better health packages than their heavily underfunded government agency could afford. It was into this circus the Claw enters. He is following up on a hot tip which leads him to this bar. The Claw is at his wit's end. He had just found out his father was still alive when suddenly, as that, he was gone again. The failed mission against Nyarlathotep had caused an assault on the Church of Dagon by the Beta. The place had been wiped out, but Nyarlathotep had escaped, and there was no trace of his father. That was months ago, and most people believed Lupin dead, but the Claw wasn't giving up on his father that quickly. He had been following dead ends for the last few months, but eventually he cut a break. The Claw was contacted by Bill First of the First family. He was the smartest man on the planet, and had been going through old data when he found an anomaly. There was an open time track from the night Lupin had disappeared, back 40 years. The Claw refused to believe it was a coincidence. He had to go back and see if he could find his dad.
Welcome to the Knockers Time Travel Experience. I'm Time Guide Sarah, and I'll be conducting your trip today, Mr. The Claw. Is this your first time trip?
Yes.
The Claw had had to make an appointment for his trip. The Knockers Time Travel Experience was a huge hit, and was booked up for years with appointments. But the Claw had had the professor pull some strings to get him an earlier trip.
So, you want to go back 40 years to the first battle of the Justice Club when they defeated Simeon Superior after he'd grown to impossible size. Yes, this is a popular trip indeed. History in the making.
Yes.
The Claw had researched possible destinations for his father 40 years ago. And in the description of a historic battle of the Justice Club, there was a mention in some reports that a mysterious stranger had in fact been the one who had killed the rampaging giant ape. The Claw, of course, didn't realize, nor did anyone else, that originally Simeon Superior didn't die in this encounter, and had really lived 40 years more to wreak havoc on the world. But time is a strange thing.
Of course you have read all the rules of time travel. First and foremost, you must not interact with anyone from the past. Doing so could destroy the future, and we at Knockers do not want that.
No. Now let's just get going.
Of course, Mr. The Claw. I understand you must be very excited. Come right this way.
Just call me Claw.
Sarah adjusted the Smile Co. branded chronal trigger, which allowed the portal to be manipulated so as to go to the time of their choosing, and the two adventurers stepped into the fourth stall of the Knockers washroom. Back to the past, we find Lupin traveling in the Justiplane with the rest of the Justice Club. He is trying to keep to himself as the rest of the club stares at him. His younger self keeps staring at the stump on his left hand. They all want to know what the future is like, but he knows that giving away anything could ruin the future. He may have already done that by killing Simeon Superior. He tries not to think of the ripples through time that he will have caused. Hell, maybe it'll be better. Simeon Superior had killed a lot of people in his time. Then again...
We're almost there!
Great.
I called in some help from a friend. He's had some dealing with the occult and time travel. He might be able to get you back to your right time.
Lupin keeps quiet, and the Justiplane comes into a vertical landing. It's funny seeing the plane like this. Now Doc Rock and the Rockers are using the old girl, but they painted the hell out of it. The Justice Club, with an extra Lupin, exit the plane and start to head into McDougal's. The snow had begun to fall quite heavily in the city, covering everything in a quiet white. The place is closed, and the street is empty.
Yoo-hoo, Captain Milky Way, here we are.
A voice comes from behind the plane, and out walks Super Priest with Altar Boy at his side. Lupin loses his mind. This monster's walking the street like there's nothing wrong. And poor Altar Boy.
You...
In the original timeline, the most sensational and tragic court case ever was the case of Super Priest accused of molesting many young boys, including his young ward, Altar Boy. Unbeknownst to the general public, Altar Boy wasn't the only power affected by Super Priest's touch.
Snicked.
Lupin lunges at the church robe power, and before anyone can react, he plunges his claws into the Super Priest's chest. Blood sprays the snow. Super Priest's heart is punctured multiple times by Lupin's claws, and he is instantly dead. And in one impulsive act, the timeline is irrevocably changed. To be continued.
Hey. Hey, you.
You talking to me?
Hey, look what I got here.
It's a fine trench coat. What's under there?
Look at these. Fresh new podcasts. First time's free.
Very delightful. I'm impressed.
Are you talking about podcasts or my balls? Because I'm not wearing anything under this. Yeah, I got this new podcast called Vinland Old Time Radio. You want to try it out?
Calling it new, but it's actually 3 years old, so really it's not new.
Are you calling it quality my my goods?
I'm questioning your marketing techniques, that's all. I think there's a truth in advertising issue here. Otherwise...
You want to try it out or not?
Otherwise it's a fine. Yeah, I'll take two. I'll take one of those Captain Courage's and one of those Phoenix Risings.
VinlandOldTimeRadio.podbean.com. That's where you find it. And get out of my face. You a cop?
Yes, and so you're telling me that you're selling something I can find for free, just littering the internet?
My plan is not sound. Get that dog away from me. Get him away from me. Ah!
The dog of fiscal irresponsibility has struck again.
VinlandOldTimeRadio.podbean.com. Let this be a lesson to you. Say no to podcasts. Say yes to podcasts. I don't know. Do something. Jesus. Get on my face.
What are you listening to this nonsense for? Two drunk assholes just talking.